The Series 63 from K&N will be for the 2018 and newer EcoBoost Mustang owners out there who might be looking to make the switch to an aftermarket cold air system and want to go with one of the most popular options on the site from an industry leader. Now, the Series 63 will not require the use of any custom or can tuning and can be had for that low to mid $300 price point. Install, according to the site, guys, going to get a strong 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter and take about an hour or so to complete from start to finish, as we'll show you later in the video. So the Series 63 from K&N, otherwise known as their Air Charger system, is going to be one of the more budget-friendly options from K&N that will appeal to newer EcoBoost owners looking to add a little bit more performance and a little bit more sound, but without ultimately breaking the bank. Now, in fact, at the low $300 price point, the Series 63 is going to be one of your more affordable options, again, from a big brand name like K&N, currently here on the site. But let's talk a little bit more about your power expectations here with the K&N. And while the company doesn't offer any specific dyno numbers with this particular kit, I would say the realistic expectation, in my humble opinion, is going to be high single digit, low double digit gains. But ultimately, every setup is going to be different. Dynos are different, conditions are different. So basically, in other words, guys, expect some gains, but I wouldn't expect anything like 20 to 30 wheel with an intake like this without any aftermarket tuning. Now, one thing you can expect here is a noticeable increase in volume under the hood of your EcoBoost thanks to the open or exposed filter design. Now, a setup like this will result in a noticeable growl under hard acceleration coming from under the hood, along with some increased turbo sounds as well with the EcoBoost platform. What I mean by this is maybe a little bit more spool noises, as well as some more of that recirculating or blow-off valve sound, which is a lot more audible with a filter design like this as opposed to a sealed enclosure like your factory airbox or other aftermarket systems that might incorporate a sealed enclosure. So long story short, guys, if you like hearing the extra sounds, if you like hearing that added growl, maybe a little bit more spool noise or some of those more blow-off valve type noises, you're certainly going to dig the open filter design like this. On the other hand, if you prefer more of a factory-like experience, you don't need all those extra sounds, well, you might want to consider an aftermarket system that's going to incorporate a sealed enclosure instead. Let's move away from the benefits and talk a little bit more about construction and what's actually included with the kit. First and foremost, guys, I do want to talk about your rotomolded plastic intake tube here. Personally, I'm a big fan of plastic tubes designs such as this because they are really good at reducing heat and heat soak, and as you may or may not know, heat is oftentimes the enemy of performance. So big time fan of the rotomolded plastic tube. Now, on top of that, you are getting the K&N filter here, which is basically what the company has built its reputation on over the years. This guy is going to feature a few layers of a cotton gauze material. At that point, that cotton gauze is sandwiched between epoxy-coated aluminum screens and then lightly coated with their signature oil. Now, because the K&N does use a oiled filter, you can wash this, you can reuse it over the years, and obviously recharge it with the K&N signature oil, being careful not to over oil the filter itself. This is a design that's obviously going to save you money over the years because, as opposed to buying a new filter every few thousand miles, basically throwing out the old one, basically clean it, re-oil it, and you're good to go. Now, we already talked about the tube here, the rotomolded plastic tube being great for resisting heat. Well, helping to resist heat even more will be the included heat shield that will isolate the filter from the hot engine bay air, along with the included weather stripping here, which will help that heat shield kind of seal to the underside of the hood. Now, it should be noted, guys, that ultimately, if heat is your #1 concern with an aftermarket system, typically an enclosed airbox design is gonna be the way to go. However, if you're not the type of owner who sits in traffic all the time, or if you're not living in a crazy hot climate, or you just really value hearing the system and all the cool noises that you can expect with an open element design, well then, ultimately this will be the best bet for you. So basically it comes down to what's most important to you guys at home. What do you value most? And making your decision from there. After that though, guys, basically the rest of the kit is gonna be used to get everything in place. That includes your couplers here, everything's included, filter adapter, and of course, all of your clamps and hardware. Now the K&N, again guys, has been made here in the USA. It is backed by the company's 10-year or million-mile warranty, just in case you run into any issues over the time. Now the Series 63 at this time is not currently CARB certified, at least at the time of this video, but it does have a ton of positive reviews here on the site. Over 100 4- and 5-star reviews to be exact. So as always guys, feel free to read up on some of those product reviews, check out some of the customer submitted images to see what this thing will look like underneath the hood of your ride before pulling the trigger. But now let's shift gears and talk a little bit more about getting the K&N Series 63 installed on your EcoBoost at home. And to give you a better idea of just how the job will go down, check out our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown right now.
Tools used for this install: needle nose pliers, 1/4-inch drive ratchet, 1/4-inch drive extension, 7, 8, 10, and 13 millimeter sockets, 4 millimeter Allen head, and 1/4-inch drive swivel. First thing we're going to do is disconnect our air temp sender and take our 7 millimeter and loosen up our clamp here. Next, we're going to remove this spring clamp and remove this hose from our air intake tube. I'm going to take my needle nose, squeeze this together, once I get it off the tube, I can just move it out of the way for now. Now that we have this hose out of the way, we're going to remove our PCV by pushing the gray clip on the side and just lifting up. We'll get that out of the way. And now we'll take off our clamp down at our turbo. Now I'm going to take my 1/4-inch drive with a 7 millimeter. We're going to loosen this hose clamp right here coming off the turbo. I'm going to get in there. I have a swivel on here. You might want to do that. It makes it easier just to get in there and loosen that clamp up. And once we have that loose, now we're going to be able to remove our air intake tube. Now that we have all our clamps loose and our hoses removed, I'm going to pull this air intake tube off our turbo down there like that, and give it a tug up top. That's going to remove our stock air intake tube. Now that we got our air intake tube removed, we're going to remove our air box. We're going to remove these clips right here, plus this 10 millimeter. We'll take the cover off first, remove the air filter, and then I'm going to lift this box right out. First thing we're going to do is take our clamps loose, pull the top of our box off, remove our stock air filter. I'm going to take my 1/4-inch drive with my 10 millimeter. We're going to loosen this bolt up and take it out. Pull that out. Now I'm going to just remove my air box just like that. And now our old air box and air intake tube is removed. So now that we got our stock air box off, we're going to start by installing some of the parts onto our new air intake system. We're going to start first with putting our rubber on it. It's going to go all the way around this. Then we have some brackets to put on the air temp sender. But first I'm going to start by installing this. We're going to take it and just going to push it down on top. And just bend it around. Now once I got it all the way around, I'm going to make sure it's pushed down all the way. And now we'll go on to installing our air temp sender into our intake tube. Now I'm going to install this rubber grommet into our air intake tube. I'm going to get it started, push it down in. Definitely a tight fit, so you're gonna have to move it around. Okay, now that I have that in, now we'll install our air temp sender. Now we're gonna put our air temp sender in. You're gonna have to push like that, get it down in, and it'll go up to that little stop there. Now that we have that done, we're gonna install our air filter holder in our air box. So this air coupler here that holds our air filter, we're gonna take these two Allen head screws. We're gonna put them through the back here. That's gonna hold our air filter once we get it in the vehicle. I'm gonna start these. Take my 4mm, my 1/4" drive ratchet. Snug these up. Now we'll install some of our brackets onto our air box. So now we have a bracket here that we have to install. We're going to take our 10mm. We're going to mount our bracket. I'm going to put it through the other side. Get it started here. And I'm not going to tighten it all the way yet because once we get in the car, we might have to move this bracket around a little bit. But this 10mm here, I'm going to snug it up. And it's still able to move when we get it inside the car. So now what we're going to do is install our rubber coupler onto our intake tube. The bigger end is going to go onto this. I already got it on. Smaller end is going to go to the turbo. I'm going to install this hose clamp now before it's in the vehicle. Just make it easier. And we'll get it on. I'll take my 1/4" drive. It's an 8mm. I'm gonna snug it up. Then I'm gonna take my other hose clamp, make sure it's loose, and just hang it on there for now till we get it onto the vehicle. Next, I'm gonna install the other rubber coupler onto our intake tube. I'm gonna put our clamp on a while, slide this over, just get it where it's gotta sit here. I'm gonna snug this clamp up to 8mm. I'm gonna leave this one just a little bit loose, that way if we have to pull it out for adjustment, we can still move it around, and then I'll just slide this one on. I like to put the hose clamps all in the same direction, so when you tighten them, they look nice. Next, we're gonna go to the vehicle, install another bracket, and then we'll start assembling our air intake system. Now we're going to install this bracket that was supplied in the kit with the 13mm that was also supplied. It has a flat washer and a lock washer. There's already a hole that's threaded into the frame here. We're going to install this into that hole, and that's going to hold our air box. So I'm going to start it and get it pretty tight, but still it'll be able to move a little bit. I'm going to install it straight up just like that. Now we'll get ready to install our air box. Now that we have everything assembled, we're going to take our air box. We're going to slide it down in place here and line it up with the screw down in the bottom of the bracket we stuck on. I'm going to take my 10mm and get that started. And once I get that started, I'm going to take my air filter now. I'm going to put it in place and get it onto our air tube there so that it's where it's got to be, and make it easier. Then when I bolt it up, I'm gonna take my 10 millimeter, reach down inside here, snug up that 10 millimeter I started. And then I'm gonna take my other 10 millimeter and I'm gonna line up our bracket that we stuck on the side here. I'm gonna stick that on. I'm gonna tighten that up. Last, take my 8 millimeter, tighten our clamp up on our air filter. And now we're ready to stick our air intake tube on. So now we're going to stick our air intake tube in. I'm going to fish that down in, slide it onto our turbo. And then stick it onto our air box over here. Just want to make sure it goes all the way around like that. Push back on our tube over here. I might have to loosen that hose clamp up just a little bit. And there we go. And now that we have that on, we'll tighten our hose clamps, install our 2 tubes that we took off, and hook up our air temp sender. Now I'm going to tighten our 2 hose clamps here. And snug this one back up. Now that I have those done, I'm going to take this wire connector they gave us in the kit. I'm going to plug it in. It's just going to make it easier to get. It gives it a little bit more length on that. Now that we have that done, we'll go down and snug our clamp up down at our turbo. Now I'm going to get in here, tighten up our 8 millimeter clamp here down at our turbo. Now that that's done, we're going to hook up our PCV and install our other hose. Now we're going to install our PCV. I'm going to fish it down through here, put it on top of our air intake tube. Now we're going to install our hose on our tube. The spring clamp is a little tough to get it to go on. Once you get it down over, now that we have that on, our air intake system is installed. That wraps up this review and install of our K&N Series 63 Air Charger cold air intake for 18 to 21 EcoBoost Mustangs. Thanks for watching, and for all things Mustang, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.